Go out and make it your mission to find out what do I need to track so that I can solve the right problems and have the right focus on the right things.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to episode 111 of the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we give you the exact tactics, strategies, and mindsets that you need to fulfill your destiny by helping thousands of people in your community and dominating your market and your life. I'm one of your hosts, Rory Morgan, along with fellow hosts Jennifer Gligoric and Tracey Sundkvist. And by the end of today's episode, you will know how to understand exactly what is going on in your business by tracking the right data and understanding what it actually means so that you can stop flying your plane blind. You can make better decisions with better information. So, how does this work? When you start a business, it's generally started with a great idea. It started with, I want people to like me. I want to help people, right? But when you get in there and you start to realize like, wait, I have to start to measure things. I have to start to understand how a business works. A lot of people find themselves blind. So what I'm going to suggest is the first thing that you need is you actually need a working operational theory of how business works. Right? Like what fundamentally is a business? And the framework I'm going to give you that I use and many other people use, many successful business owners, is going to be the 4 core marketing functions. So there are 4 things that every business does. And this is always true. And all of those things are actually fundamentally, they are marketing functions. They are not, finance is just something that supports your marketing, right? Your janitor is just something that supports your marketing, because everything that your business does is an interaction with your marketing, with your actual market, right? Like you're interacting with customers through ads, you're interacting with your market through your sales process, you're interacting with your market through delivering, right? Everything you do is actually a marketing function. So you have to understand your business as a marketing machine, and there's 4 functions. One progressively happens after the next. The first function is lead generation. So every business must produce leads. And a lead is just somebody who indicates that they are interested in what you can do. Hey, I'm interested in finding out if you can solve my problem. I'm interested in finding out if you can give me the result that I'm looking for, right? So that's kind of the most simple definition, is there's someone who you can talk to that's interested in what you do, right? So every business must generate leads. The next thing every business must do is the second function after you get that person interested is then you have to convert leads. So the second function is conversion, lead conversion, right? That would be your sales process, your educational process of how you educate patients or clients about what their situation is, about what's going wrong with them so that you can fix it, right? And then at the end of the conversion process, you ask them to pay you money in order to give them the result that they're after, right? So they say, yes, I think you're the person to give me the result. The third function after you convert is fulfillment or delivery. You actually have to fulfill on the promise that you made when you sold them, right? So where people go wrong is they tend to think, well, my business is just providing services and treatments. And so the promise that I made them was that I would give them services and treatments. And so as long as I give them services and treatments, then I am fulfilling. And that's not correct. Actually, the reason the person buys is because they want a result. They want an outcome. They want a certain life benefit. And whether or not you realize it, what they were purchasing was a result. And so what you are actually selling in your conversion process is a result and an experience. And so your fulfillment as a marketing function must then fulfill on the result or the benefit and the experience of how to get that result that you promised them. And then the fourth thing is then your back end. So that's resell, retention, and referrals. So do you keep your clients? Do you keep offering value? Do you keep the people wanting to do business with you? So from a business standpoint, what this means is you are increasing the value of the client because they keep paying you more money. Now, that doesn't mean that you're like extracting and it's not extortion. You're offering ongoing value that the person wants to pay you for because you're providing value to their life. So fundamentally, those are the four things. Every business generates leads. Every business converts leads. Every business fulfills on the promise they made. And every business retains and resells and gets referrals from that. All four of those things are marketing functions. Every business exists on this spectrum. And the CEO is the person who oversees that marketing machine, right? He owns the marketing machine. And so that's fundamentally the model with which you have to understand, okay, this is a theory of business. Now, there's so many things that we can track to measure. How's my marketing machine, those four things, how is it working, right? You can measure it through the profit, through the number of leads, the quality of leads. And there's so many ways of measuring that, but this can give you a foundation for understanding how it all fits together.
It is incredibly empowering to have tools that strengthen your ability to make the right decisions and take the right path when you're trying to grow a practice. What we often see, however, is our clients become hyper-focused on a single thing rather than understanding that the data that they need to look at needs to cover every aspect of their business so they can accurately determine whether the problem is really the problem. And as an example, by the time we get clients, they're very focused on my marketing is not working, I'm not getting enough leads, or the quality of the lead is terrible. And those are things they track. They love to see how many people are pitching up and how many people are reclosing. However, they aren't tracking things that go before that. So they aren't looking at the whole story. They aren't looking at how much are they spending to drive their leads? What is the ratio of the number of leads that they're getting for that spend? They're not adapting their budget to impact on the issue. So the thing to remember here is that data doesn't happen in isolation. You can't just look at one thing without understanding that context, because the context is what gives you enough information so that you can make the right choices and the right decisions and focus on the things that are ultimately going to help you grow.
And Jennifer, I know you had some thoughts on that, but there's two things I wanted to say. Number one is, just in case you guys haven't been, initiated into the beautiful South African accent that Tracey has and her nuances, when she says pitching up, I had to be like, what does that mean when I first got to know her? But that means showed appointments. And so I'm just giving Tracey a hard time. But I had a teacher, my 10th grade English teacher was from South Africa. She's one of my favorite teachers of all time because she really challenged me to go deeper in the literature that we were reading. That's another story. But the point of what she's really getting at here is that when you have the context, right, like one of the most common questions that I ask people. So they'll come to me and they're talking about what they think is not working in their business. And they'll say things like, I want my marketing to be better, or I want better leads, or I want people who want to buy from me, right? Something like that. One of the most common questions I have to ask is, okay, what business problem are we solving? I need to, what is the business problem? And when somebody says, I need better marketing, what I know is they don't understand their business. Because what you would be doing is you would be speaking in the language of numbers, because the language of numbers is business. And you would say, the business problem I am solving is that I had 60 booked appointments and only 20 of them showed up, right? And so statistically, I only have a 33% show rate for my appointments. It's costing me $200 per booked appointment. And when only 1 out of 3 of them shows up, that means it costs me $600 to get a showed appointment. And if I'm only converting half of them, that then means it costs me $1,200 to make a sale. And my average client value is only $1,000. So therefore, I'm not profitable, right? So you can put it into the language of business. And that's one of the most common questions I have to ask people is, what business problem are we solving? I need to understand your business. And you can't have those conversations if you don't understand the numbers.
Right. In order to start understanding the numbers, and this is the point I was going to make, is you have to think about it through the lens of the patient journey, right? So how does someone get to even know you exist on the planet? How are they interacting with you? What is your first touch point with them? We do track, and especially in healthcare and clinics, patient touch points, but we started at a very late process. When you start to do the patient touch points at the very beginning, and you track that data of the patient touch points there in the beginning, rather than, later on when we're doing fulfillment, then it builds a story. You get the same numbers. You're already tracking data. So we're just talking about for lead generation, you track the data at the very beginning of your touch points with your patient or your potential patient.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I want to do is just to give a little bit more context, right? Okay, so now you have a theory of how business works, right? Or you have a theory of at least understanding the structure of a business as a marketing machine. So I think the next step is to say, now you need a theory of how do you optimize that business structure? How do you actually look and decide what should I work on? What's the problem I should fix first before looking for the next problem to fix, right? Instead of leaving at, I want to fix my marketing, let's talk about what specifically about your marketing isn't working in the language of data. So the next theory would be the theory of constraints, okay? I've got a little story because when I was a kid, somewhere around, I don't know, maybe my 8th birthday or my 8th, when I was 8 years old for Christmas, I got an iguana for Christmas from my parents.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this.
Yes. And it was, I don't know, 6 inches long. It was this tiny little baby iguana, right? I named it Iggy because that's what everybody names their iguana. And I didn't have any creativity. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl yet because it was a juvenile and you don't see those signs when they're a baby. And I was always hoping it was going to be a boy, but it turned out to be a girl. And so Iggy kind of felt like an inappropriate name, but I don't know, maybe Iggy's a good girl's name. But it seemed like a boy's name to me. But
if you call her Miss Iggy, then it sounds good.
Yeah, I could have done that, but I never did. Again, I lacked creativity. Okay, so you have an iguana. Here's the thing with iguanas. They are capable of growing very large. And I might get these numbers slightly wrong, but they can be 6 or 7 feet long if they have the environment to grow to. And they can be 75, 80 pounds. They can get really, really large. They are capable of growing very large. And the thing that is going to keep it from growing is the things that it's constrained by, right? So when you first get your iguana, you're going to have this tiny little aquarium, cage, right? And maybe it's just 12 inches across. And that's fine for a 6-inch iguana. Right. And of course, you have to take it out and walk it and let it climb around in your tree and stuff. You got to get it exercise. But fundamentally, the primary living environment is this little 12-inch aquarium tank. And it also needs proper nutrition. Right. So there's certain nutrition that it needs. Right. Yes, it needs greens and leafy vegetables and stuff. But iguanas are also, they're omnivorous, right? So they also eat meat. They need protein, right? You have to give specific nutrients, right? They're also cold-blooded because they're reptiles. And so it needs a certain amount of UV light, right? It needs water, right? So, because I don't know if they're technically considered amphibians, but no, they're not. They would not be an amphibious reptile, but it lives in an environment with water and dry land, right? So there's all these things that an iguana needs, just like there's all these things that a business needs. And so what will happen is the iguana will grow to the level of its constraint. The most common and most obvious one is going to be that it will grow to the length of its cage. So even though this iguana is capable of being 6 feet long, if it's in a 12-inch enclosure, you will get a 12-inch iguana, right? When its tail is hitting up against one end and its nose is at the other end, it's going to stop growing. Of course, other constraints could be it doesn't have the UV light that it needs. It could be that it's not getting the nutrition that it needs. Now, but the most common and most obvious one is the length of that enclosure. And so as it grows, you have to upgrade to the 24-inch and then the 36-inch, right? And you have to make it bigger and bigger in order for it to keep growing, unless you decide, I don't want my iguana to get bigger. This is too unmanageable. It's like too awkward to take this 45-pound reptile and walk it around on the streets. Like, I'm good with a 3-foot iguana, right? But the reality is there's a constraint that stops its growth. And so in business, every business is going to have problems all the time. There's always things that are not working, right? There's always things that you wish were working better. As you hire people to replace yourself, right? You start your business and it's just you. As you hire people, that person at first isn't going to be as good as you, right? They're not going to be as efficient as you. They're not going to understand the nuances as well as you. And so that's going to bring down the productivity a little bit, right? And you might have to be okay with that as you hire someone and say, okay, like, I'm going to allow them to learn, but I am going to focus on the primary constraint, which is X. Okay, right? It might be lead gen. I'm going to focus on improving the lead gen, and I'm going to let this person do the fulfillment as an example, right? I know it's not going to be quite as good as me, but it's going to be pretty good. But the primary business issue is this particular constraint. So basically, if you have to think about it progressively, because in a business, everything starts with lead generation. And then there could be a part in lead generation which is constrained, right? So if it's like, we're getting 1 million impressions every month, but none of them actually want to work with us. None of them actually inquire as leads. Well, then what you would know is that, okay, we have to make a different offer that makes people want to become a lead, that makes them interested in doing business with us, right? So we know that we're able to get attention, but whatever we're offering to them isn't actually attractive. If you're then able to get leads and you get 500 leads, but then what happens is none of those leads book an appointment, well, then you would know that the constraint is after actually generating the lead into the place where we would say, we have to decide, is it lead quality or is it lead conversion? Right. So now you can start to look at, okay, here's the constraint. I have the number of leads that I need. Are we actually offering the right thing that people want? Are we offering the right benefit that people want? Are we solving the problem that people want to be solving? Or are we just offering something that's interesting to people, but they don't really care about that much? Right. So you can adjust, you can look at where the constraint, so it comes in, it's like a pipeline going through. And then where does it choke down? Where does it choke down? That's the constraint that keeps the business from growing. Likewise, it's the same thing in lead conversion, right? It's the same thing in fulfillment, right? Okay, if we know that if we're doing a great job, we're going to get a certain amount of 5-star reviews and we're going to get a certain amount of video testimonials. If we're not getting those 5-star reviews and we're not getting those video testimonials that we can measure and we can track, what we know is that we aren't actually fulfilling in a way that people feel good about it, right? The experience we're providing. Are they actually getting the result that they wanted? Are they actually feeling the way they wanted to feel? Do they look the way they wanted to look? Whatever that promise we made is, like, we can actually measure and we can determine, oh, okay, looks like I need to change the way I deliver my product or my service. So we have 4 core marketing functions. And then you apply the theory of constraints to the 4 core marketing functions.
And I want to jump in and just make this a very concise. So at the most basic level, what you need to be tracking, the very first tracking, which if you work with any marketing, was impressions. How many people are looking at the ad? The next thing you need to track are leads. And a lead, you need to do it in a couple of ways. The first is everything: paid, unpaid, walk-ins, referrals, farmers markets. You're setting out a table in front of a store. You need to be tracking it and track it separately and then together. It's very important, because then if you have Google ads and you may have a Facebook and then you do a farmer's market, if you're not tracking those separately, you really don't know which one of those channels is actually fulfilling, right? And you're going to need to track the same thing. How many of those schedule per channel and all together? And then how many of them show per channel and together? How many of them convert, and what they're converting to? You want to make sure, are they converting to the core package that we're doing, our big offer? Or are we getting a lot of little conversions to something littler? Because that could indicate that the salesperson has a hard time asking for the money and they're just getting them at a little bit. There's a lot of reasons maybe those people aren't converting, that you haven't built enough value, and they don't believe you. They're just going to test you out. Those are different reasons and different things that you can work on. So you need to track, and that, like, if they don't get your core offer and they don't get that outcome, they don't buy into the outcome they say that they need. Why is that? Well, do they need to talk to their wife? Is it a finance issue? Do you not have enough financing? You need to be able to track that. You also need to track how long they stay in your program. Do you get a lot of people who sign up for a 3 or 6 month offer and then they lop off at a certain period of time? When is that? And why do they state that is? Because you can make your fulfillment better. You can get them more committed. There are many things you could build in that process to keep them on to it could be as easy as, we're going to start sending an email out a week. We're going to send a video to them just to encourage them, because we know 2 to 3 weeks they start to get discouraged because it's not happening quick enough. Whatever it is, you need to track it so you can fix it. And then, can you resell them, retain them into wellness? And then, are they giving you referrals? So at the very least, and you can add in more tracking as we go on, but at the very least, those are the areas that need to be tracked in your business for you to push really serious, intentional, and purposeful growth.
Jennifer, I love how you've introduced and connected the 4 core marketing functions to the specific things that you would track. I think the only thing that that is rolled up in that as well would be having a look at your profit and your price.
Yes.
So this is something that business owners are notoriously, and practice owners specifically, are so guilty of, in that they gauge how successful they are based on whether they have a healthy bank balance. What they don't understand is that you need to be able to look at your financials to see, do you have healthy margins? What this is going to tell you is, are you pricing at the right price point? If your practice is very, very busy, you're seeing loads of people, there's very little space for you to actually increase the number of new patients coming in. But what you're finding is that you're really spinning your wheels, but you're actually not making money. The first thing that you need to know is, well, if you're signing them up, but you're not making the money, you need to have a look at your pricing. What that means is that you're probably the cheapest. And if you're the cheapest, that's a one-way ticket to the bottom. Nobody wants that. Right?
Yeah, you're a commodity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course, the other thing then would be having a look at performance metrics. And this is more in that fulfillment space, would be, how is my team performing? What is it that we've said we wanted to achieve over the next quarter? And how are we tracking whether we're actually going to hit that or not? So a lot of the, 2 of the things that I've mentioned, it is about understanding what you've done up until this point, but it's also taking it into the future and saying, if we do not change something about this, we're either going to keep losing money, or we're just not going to be effective enough so that we can improve how much money we're making.
Yep. And I have 2 thoughts that popped into my mind. One is to clarify what you were, or to take what you were saying, Tracey, a little bit deeper. This is the most important metric because this is like if you took all of the 4 core marketing functions, your theory of business, and you combined it down into one statistic, it would be 2 statistics, but then there's a ratio based on that statistic, right? So it would be LTV, which stands for lifetime value, divided by CAC. That's CAC. So LTV divided by client acquisition cost. So how much does it cost you to acquire a client, and how much is that client worth? That tells you your unit economics of what does it cost me to get the client? What does it cost me what do I gain from that? Right? So that's the first thing that you've got to know. And then from there, you can also look at what would be called LTV to COGS, cost of goods sold, or cost of services sold, right? So what does it actually cost you to deliver that? One of the ways that this so frequently plays out that I see, so with chiropractors I work with a lot of the time, just an example of what you can look at when you start to look at this. A lot of chiropractors are thinking to themselves, man, 40 or 50% of my patients are Medicare patients. I have to accept Medicare, right? And they're very busy. They're spending a lot of time. 40, 50%, half of my clinic is Medicare.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at the value of the Medicare patients, you might find that you're giving 40 or 50% of your time to serving these Medicare patients. They're only giving you 20% of your revenue. They're not actually worth as much money. And the side piece here is most Medicare patients also have cash. And if you have a great sales process and education process, you can probably get them to pay cash instead of doing the Medicare, right? But what you would realize is, well, I don't have time to work on my business. I don't have time to increase my margins. I don't have time to improve these other things because I'm so busy seeing patients. But the patients you're seeing that are taking up all your time, right? Just imagine if you said, no, those folks who are in the Medicare demographic, they need to pay me the same as everyone else. Yes, you would lose some, right? You would lose some of those patients, but you wouldn't lose them all. And then all of a sudden, you would be less busy because you lost some of them, and everyone would be paying you the same amount, so your margin would improve, right? So that's a really quick example.
I just wanted to add, never let fear drive your decisions like this. Let the numbers tell you what to do, because you might lose that, just like Rory said. But at the same time, if you can provide a greater service, if you can be more there for them as a physician, if you can get your patients to better and higher outcomes, isn't that what you're there to do, rather than just to be a cog, giving them, here you are, and we're going to do the best we can with what we've got. I'm so busy. Let's just get this machine. And at the end of the day, feeling like, did I really serve my community and these people in the manner of which I can serve them? You have to be able to think of those things too. At the end of the day, your highest, best use of your time and your talent is going to help more people, more meaningful and impactful ways than letting fear drive your decisions. And also, your fear is keeping people in a system that is not serving them. When 100. We have enough people electing out of the system and saying it's not serving these patients anymore, we're going to opt out. The system will be forced to change. So don't be a part of the problem because of your own personal fear.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to give one more example. This is a really key example of thousands of clinics I've worked with. This is the most common area that I have seen when you actually look at the real data, that clinic owners realize that what they thought was going on was not actually going on. Okay. So
100%.
They will start running ads, and they will start getting a bunch of new patients. And what they will say is these patients are low quality, right? Jennifer said earlier, like, you have to track all of your lead sources, and you have to track your referrals, your organic people who just find your website, walk-ins, right? You did farmers markets, you did a workshop, right? You have to track all of it. And when you track all of it, right? What we find again and again and again, when they're saying these advertising leads are low quality, almost every single time we find that if you measure your conversion rates from all of your sources, they actually are converting patients from paid advertising at a higher rate than they are converting their organic and their referral, which means the patients from advertising actually are higher quality than the referrals and the organic and the walk-ins, which when you look at the actual data, it forces you to say, okay, now I understand the constraint in my business is actually that I'm bad at sales, or that I'm not following a good structured process, right? I'm not actually using a process that converts people, right? And people hate to admit that, but when you actually force yourself to look at the data, it becomes real.
And you get empowered and you can make the most impactful changes. Knowledge is power. And this is your way to get the knowledge you need to be powerful and to institute powerful change in your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Only people who are interested in strengthening how their practice is performing are going to be still listening to this podcast. I think the thing that I'd like to share is if you are not where you want to be, you can't have the attitude that you know why. Because if you really did know why, you wouldn't be in that situation. Yeah. So be open to the fact that you are tracking the wrong things, and then go out and make it your mission to find out, what do I need to track so that I can solve the right problems and have the right focus on the right things. Because without doing that, it's going to take you 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. And all this time, you think you know what's going on, when at a base level, the facts are saying you actually don't.
I'm going to give one more story, even though we're probably a little bit over on time right now.
Wow.
This reminds me of someone I talked to in the last couple of weeks who does like dating coaching, basically. And essentially, this woman comes to him and she's like, all of these men that I'm seeing, they only want me for sex. That's all they want. That's all they care about is sex. Right. And he says, okay, well, let's open up your Instagram profile. Right. And her Instagram profile is, she wasn't like an OnlyFans girl. But she's a very, very attractive, essentially, like her Instagram profile looks like she's a swimsuit model, right? Like just amazing body, and everything is just showing off her sexuality nonstop. Right. And he says, okay, well, here's the issue. You're putting yourself out onto the dating marketplace as a sex object, right? It's like, it's not that it's wrong. It's not that you're not allowed to do it, but that is what you are putting out, is I am a sex object. And so if you would like men to value you for who you are on the inside, we have to change that, right? And instead of saying, okay, that's what the data tells me, she got offended and said, I'm allowed to do this. This is my body. I'm comfortable. I want to show off my body, right? And so it's like, so I would challenge you clinic owners, what's more important to you? Actually reaching your goal or protecting your ego? Your sense of like, no, I'm great. I'm great the way I am. I want to stay the way I am. I want to do it my way. Or do you actually want to reach your goals and help the people that you want to help? Right? Are you going to be coachable and look at what the data is telling you? Or are you going to insist that you can just be yourself and do it the way you want to do it, and you're still going to get your goals? Right? So with that, I want to remind you guys that there's a fee for this podcast, and the fee is to refer your friends, send this podcast episode to people that you know, and tell them how helpful it is. If this benefits you, since we're giving it to you for free, your payment to us is to send it to other people and share the podcast, because this is going to help communities get more healthy. This is going to help business owners be more successful. You know, you're going to be able to go on vacation in the Bahamas with your clinic owner friends because you're making more money and you're helping more people and you're living a more fulfilled lifestyle, right? So help out your friends, help out your buddies, and get people excited about how to grow their clinic. That's the fee. Next thing is go to superclinicproject.com and make sure that you subscribe and join our mastermind with Dr. Zeno, so you can learn how to grow a clinic that does millions and millions of dollars, just like Dr. Zeno's clinic. So All of us are in there. All of us are coaching you in there. And that mastermind is super, super productive. And you can try it for free for 14 days. So guys, have a good one and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project Podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project Podcast.